In the world of crime family, Don Damien and I were known for two things. Him for running wild, me for standing by him. Everyone knew I was crazy about Damien. It started when we were kids. I was born with a congenital heart defect. My parents couldn't afford the surgery and chose to walk away. Back then, Damien was just a street-level errand boy whose father had gambling debts. He had no standing, no money, nothing. But to raise cash for my surgery, he volunteered for the most dangerous work the Coronelli family had, the kind where each job was a gamble with his life and every payday came in blood. He clawed his way up. The Don eventually took him in as an adopted son, and I became his wife, just like I'd always hoped. But 10 years into our marriage, Damien stopped coming home. I'd sit alone at a table of cold food, calling him over and over. Sometimes a woman's voice would answer in the background. He had a private lounge at the family's club, and there was never a shortage of company. My best friend Vincent couldn't understand it. Is it worth it? He doesn't love you anymore. I just smiled. He gave me my life. I know he still loves me. Then Vincent forwarded me an encrypted video. A girl in a hospital gown sat on a hospital bed. At the edge of the frame, a hand with sharp-knuckled fingers reached into the shot, a hand wearing the family crest watch. Their fingers were intertwined. The caption read, "My hero promised to marry me once I'm better." Yay! I stared at the screen for a long time. That watch. I knew it cold. It was the one I'd fastened it onto his wrist myself more times than I could count, and there was no way I was wrong. I knew that watch. It was the one Damien never missed a family meeting without. I couldn't be mistaken. Vincent's next message came through. "That's Damien, right? He's out here planning to marry someone else and you're still playing the loyal wife he doesn't deserve." Vincent never softened his words, but I knew he meant well. And honestly, I already knew. Damien had gone 5 years barely sleeping to pay for my surgery, days collecting debts for the family, nights doing wet work, early mornings at my hospital bedside, all of it for me. Back then, I'd made myself a promise. This man bought my life with his blood, and no matter what happened, whether he wanted me or not, I'd never let go. I looked down at the photo on my phone. The girl was maybe 18, 19. Pretty face, pale enough to look fragile. Honestly, she reminded me a little of my younger self. I closed my eyes, then opened the messaging app. Damien's thread. 3 hours ago, I'd sent him a dozen messages. Was he coming home tonight? Should I keep dinner? Was something going on with the family? He just replied. 2 words, business. I looked at that word for a moment, let out a small laugh, checked the hospital location Vincent had sent me, and walked out the door. I took a cab over. The moment I stepped out, the sky opened up. Heavy rain with no warning. My hair was soaked through before I could do anything about it. I didn't care. I stopped at a vendor on the street and picked something up, an expensive bouquet arrangement, then headed into the hospital, checked in at the front desk, and made my way to the VIP ward. I knocked. "Who is it?" A girl's voice from inside. I didn't answer. Then another voice, one I knew by heart. "Stay there. I'll get it. Damien." So this was what handling family business looked like these days. The door opened. Damien's face carried a softness I hadn't seen in years. The moment he saw me, it vanished. "You? How did you even find—" His voice dropped, and he shifted in the doorway, blocking the gap like he was shielding whoever was inside. "What are you doing here? You're not going to make a scene, are you? This is a hospital. Nina just had surgery. She can't handle stress. If you have something to say it out here." I hadn't said a word. I laughed quietly to myself. "Handle? I thought you were handling family business. Do you have to do this right now?" Damien's jaw tightened, knuckles rapping impatiently on the metal door frame. "I don't get a single moment to myself anymore? Everything has to go through you? I run this family's operations. I'm not your errand boy." I didn't answer. I just tried to step inside with the flowers, and he grabbed my wrist. "What do you think you're doing?" The sound that came from my wrist wasn't good. His grip was too hard. I actually heard my own bone pop. The bouquet hit the floor, flowers scattering. Damien realized he'd gripped too hard. He let go fast. The pain hit sharp through my whole wrist. I looked down at the bruise already spreading across my skin, deep purple forming fast. The dirty work of the Coronelli family had always been Damien's specialty, tracking down debtors, clearing out traitors, the kind of work that built strength and paid well. After years of it, he was stronger than almost anyone, the kind of man who could snap a neck barehanded if he had to. I'd asked him once, was it worth it? Nearly dying for me over and over? He'd grinned like he had no doubts at all, every time. Besides, these hands I've built up, they can kill, but they'll protect you too. The hands built to protect me had just become the thing hurting me. Did that hurt? Damien looked at me, standing there not saying a word, and his voice went quieter than I expected. "If you weren't trying to push past me, I wouldn't have—" He reached out gently, fingers wrapping around my wrist, expression unreadable. "Let me take you to— Damien, are you done? My heart's feeling bad." Nina's voice came through from inside the room, thick with held-back crying. Damien dropped my wrist immediately, half turning back toward the room. Then he stopped. He glanced down at my wrist. His voice came out rough. "Go find a nurse. Get it looked at. Nina needs me right now." The door closed. I don't know how long I stood in that hallway. Through the door, I could hear Damien's voice going soft and patient as he calmed her down, and Nina's voice carrying over his, tearful and upset. "Is that woman trying to take you from me? I don't want you to go." I turned and walked away. The wall sconce at the end of the corridor flickered once, like something being extinguished. I got home and treated the bruise myself, still wearing the rain-soaked clothes. I sat down on the couch and stared at nothing until I didn't know anything anymore. I came back to myself in the ICU. "I cannot believe you. Skipped dinner, ran a fever you didn't notice, thought you were made of iron?" Vincent's voice beside me. His eyes were red. I looked at him, and for some reason the tears came immediately. "I'm sorry. My heart had been damaged since childhood. The surgery hadn't fixed everything. The doctor said I needed at least a week." The next day, the door to my room slammed open. Not like a nurse, but like someone arriving angry. I thought it was Vincent. It was Damien. He was across the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside my bed, grabbing my hand. "Why didn't you tell me you were hospitalized? Why didn't you say anything?" I didn't speak. I didn't look at him. Damien exhaled. He tucked my cold hand under the blanket, then finally said, "I know I handled things wrong the other night. I shouldn't have let you go home alone, but you've had heart problems yourself. You know how bad it can get." Nina's just my associate's little sister, and that man took a bullet for me. I couldn't turn my back on that. I turned my head and looked at him. Just your associate's little sister? I said it quietly. The kind of friend's little sister you promised to marry? What are you talking about? Damien's brow furrowed. Would you stop making things up? I'm never going to marry Nina. I'm looking after her for a few days and you're this jealous? Do you know who her brother is? He saved my life. I smiled slightly and held up my phone, the screenshot I'd saved. Damien glanced at it and dismissed it. She's 19. Girls that age make jokes like this all the time. Half the young women in the family say stuff like that. It doesn't mean anything. When did you get so sensitive? I didn't say anything. He sighed, patience wearing thin. Okay. I know I've been making you unhappy lately, but I'm not interested in Nina. Not like that. He found a way around my IV line and pulled me against him the same way he used to, chin resting against the top of my head. His voice dropped low. You're the one I love. Stop overthinking it. I hesitated. Then I put my arms around him. His jacket smelled like perfume. Not mine, not his. Something young and sweet, the kind of scent that belonged on a teenager. A flicker crossed his face. Relief. All right, he said, patting my back. What do you want to eat? You're in recovery. You need to eat properly. I named something. He stood up to go, and right before he walked out, his phone rang. He lowered his voice to take it, said, I'll be there soon, don't be scared, in the same voice he used to use with me when things were different. On the day I was discharged, I ran into Nina in the corridor. She was wandering in her hospital gown. I tried to walk past her without acknowledging her. She grabbed my hand. Oh my God, are you Quinn? I always see your name on his phone. You're even his wallpaper. She stared at me like she'd spotted someone famous, holding on and not letting go. Who are you to him? Why is he keeping your picture like that? I looked at her calmly. Damien never told you who I am? She shook her head. I smiled. Then I'll tell you. I'm his wife. Nina's face went white. She let go of my hand and stumbled backward. No, that can't be right. He's supposed to marry me. He said so. Who are you showing up like this? I've been married to him for 11 years, I said without raising my voice. Nina dropped to the floor crying, hyperventilating. I stood there feeling mostly confused. The noise drew a crowd, people waiting to pay their bills, strangers who didn't know anything about any of it, who started pointing fingers at me. Look at her. A grown woman going after a girl like that. That poor thing is sobbing and she just stands there. I looked at them. Did anyone here see me say a single word to her? Did anyone see me touch her? They glanced at each other. Then came the sound of dress shoes on marble, the rhythm I knew from every family meeting where Damien walked in. He came through the crowd at a near run, face tight with fury, jacket flaring at the hem, the holster at his hip half visible beneath it. He dropped to one knee beside Nina, voice soft. Easy. Breathe. In. Out. You're okay. I'm here. You finally came. She let out a sob. He got her settled in a wheelchair, then turned and looked at me. He crossed the distance. Crack. The slap knocked everything out of my head for a moment. My lips split and I tasted blood. That was the first time Damien had ever hit me. For another woman. For something I never did. I thought you'd at least have some sympathy for Nina. You both had heart problems. You of all people should understand. But instead of cutting her any slack, you go after her just because she has feelings for me? I touched my cheek, already swelling. I looked at him. When exactly did I go after her? There was almost a laugh in my voice. I came to finish my discharge paperwork. She grabbed me, told me I was a mistress, had a crowd cursing me out, and somehow this is my fault? Nina sat in her wheelchair, wiping her eyes. I never called you a mistress. I would never say something like that. It was the first time in my life I laughed out of pure bitterness. Damien's hand had moved before he'd even thought about it. When he actually looked at my face, the swelling already blooming red, something stalled in him. He hadn't meant to hit me, but then Nina's crying pulled him back. Damien, do you really think I'm that kind of person? I know exactly what kind of person you are. Damien smoothed her hair, then turned back to me with a frown. Quinn, you've really let me down. I almost laughed again. I see. You know exactly what kind of person she is. You've known me for 30 years, and you still don't know what kind of person I am. I smiled at the irony of it, turned around, and finished my discharge paperwork without another word. As I walked away, something twisted in Damien's chest that he couldn't explain. Excuse me. A girl who'd been in line behind me spoke up, looking uncomfortable. I was standing with her the whole time. I don't know what you want to believe, but she didn't do anything. The cameras are right there if you want to check. I'm only saying this because it wasn't right. She left before anyone could respond. Damien stood there. What's her problem? Nina muttered, then realized Damien was watching her. Brother, you believe me, don't you? Don't listen to strangers. She pressed a hand to her chest. My heart again. Damien didn't say anything, but something had shifted in him that he couldn't name. Something quiet and sour. He wheeled Nina back to her room, stood to leave, and she grabbed his arm. Don't go. Stay with me. The conflict in his face was visible. In the end, he sat back down and touched her hair. Get some sleep. By then, I was already out on the street, and I suddenly realized I had nowhere to go. After the wedding, my old apartment had been reclaimed by the family. We'd been living in a villa in Damien's name, a wedding gift from the Dawn, title deeds in his name. Everything I owned? Nothing. A mob wife's entire estate was her husband's protection, and that protection had slowly become a blade. I laughed at myself, quietly. The sky was getting dark. The rain came back. There was a bus stop across the street. The light turned green and I ran for it, hand over my head. Then a set of headlights cut through the dark and a horn blared. A black SUV, no plates, windows blacked out. I turned my head toward it. Then I was in the air. Everything went red. The pain from my body was one thing, but the pain in my stomach was something else entirely. Something that made me want to scream. In that one instant, I felt
the impact should have killed me. At least, that's what everyone thought. The SUV fled before anyone could get the plate. By the time the ambulance arrived, I had no pulse for almost 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Long enough for doctors to call it a miracle when my heart started beating again. Long enough for something inside me to finally die. When I woke up, the room was dark. Machines beeped steadily beside me. My abdomen felt like someone had carved me open with a knife. The first thing I heard was Vincent's voice. "Don't tell him she's awake." Someone answered quietly. "But he's her husband." Vincent laughed. The sound was cold enough to freeze blood. "Husband? Is that what we're calling him now?" I opened my eyes. Vincent was sitting beside my bed. For the first time since we'd met, he looked genuinely furious. "You're awake." His voice softened immediately. I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. "What happened?" Vincent looked away. For several seconds, he didn't answer. Then he handed me a folder. "Read." My hands shook as I opened it. Medical reports. Blood work. Surgical notes. Then one sentence. Patient was approximately 6 weeks pregnant at time of trauma. I stared. And stared. And stared. The words stopped making sense. Pregnant. I had been pregnant. A child. Mine and Damien's. A tiny life I never even knew existed. Gone. Just like that. Something inside me cracked so quietly nobody else could hear it. Not even me. The door exploded open. Damien. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. The moment he saw me awake, relief flooded his face. "Quinn." He rushed forward. For the first time in years. For the first time in a very long time. He looked terrified of losing me. "I've been here every day." His fingers wrapped around mine. "I thought." His voice broke. "I thought you were going to die." I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man. The boy who had sold pieces of himself to save my life. The man I'd spent 30 years loving. The man who had become a stranger. And, for the first time, I felt nothing. Just exhaustion. Damien seemed to realize it. His smile faded. "Quinn." I slowly pulled my hand away. Vincent silently handed him another folder. Damien frowned. Then opened it. I watched his face change. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. Horror. His hands began shaking. "No." His voice cracked. "No." He looked at me. Then back at the report. Then at me again. "We had a baby?" Nobody answered. The silence said enough. Damien looked like someone had put a bullet through his chest. That night he sat beside my bed until sunrise. He didn't speak. Didn't sleep. Didn't move. Just stared at the floor. Over and over. Like he was replaying every choice he'd made. Every ignored phone call. Every empty dinner table. Every time he'd chosen someone else. Every time he'd failed us. 3 days later, the police found the SUV. Not because of skill. Because Vincent found it first. The driver lasted exactly 12 minutes before he started talking. Then the truth came out. The hit wasn't meant for me. It was meant for Damien. A rival family had mistaken me for one of his escorts. Wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong target. The kind of mistake that happened every day in our world. But when Damien heard it, something snapped. For 3 straight weeks, the Coronelli underworld became a war zone. Safe houses burned. Businesses disappeared. Traders vanished. Men who had spent 20 years avoiding Damien suddenly discovered there were worse things than death. Rumors spread. Don Damien had gone insane. Maybe they were right. Because when the dust settled, nobody involved in the attack was left breathing. Then came Nina. She arrived at the villa one afternoon carrying flowers. Her face was pale. Nervous. Hopeful. She still didn't understand. Not really. "Can I see Damien?" The staff looked uncomfortable. Nobody answered. Eventually she found him herself. He was standing alone in the garden. She smiled weakly. "I heard you're okay." No response. I was worried. Still nothing. Then she gathered her courage. "You promised you'd always take care of me." That got his attention. Damien finally looked at her. And for the first time, really looked. Not at a sick girl. Not at someone he pitied. Just another person. A stranger. "You misunderstood." Nina froze. Damien's voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "I saved your brother because he's family. I helped you because he asked. I stayed because I felt responsible." Every word landed like a hammer. "But I never loved you." The flowers slipped from her hands. "No. I never promised to marry you." "You did." "I didn't." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Damien didn't move, didn't comfort her, didn't wipe them away, because the softness she'd depended on was gone. You're confusing gratitude with love. Nina broke down completely. But this time, Damien walked away. 6 months later, the divorce papers arrived. Damien stared at them for nearly an hour, then signed. Just one signature. His hand shook the entire time. The day I left, he came to see me. The villa was empty. Boxes packed. Memories gone. I stood by the doorway. He stood outside, like a stranger. For a long time neither of us spoke. Finally he asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. About childhood. About surgeries. About promises. About funerals that never happened. About the baby we'd lost. Then I shook my head. No. The answer hurt him more than hatred ever could. Because hatred meant there was still something left. Love. Pain. Emotion. Anything. But there wasn't. There was only silence. I smiled gently. The same smile I'd given him for 30 years. "Thank you for saving my life, Damien." His eyes immediately turned red. "But I already paid you back with all of it." The tears finally fell. Not mine. His. The great Don Damien Coronelli. The man who made entire cities tremble. Standing in front of his ex-wife and crying like a child. Because some losses couldn't be fixed with power. Or money. Or violence. Or regret. I walked away. And this time, neither of us tried to stop me. Years later, people still talked about Don Damien. The ruthless king who conquered half the underworld. The man who never remarried. The man who kept a photograph inside his wallet until the day he died. An old photo. 2 children. A skinny street kid. A sick little girl with a weak heart. Smiling at each other. Back when saving her life had been enough. Back before he learned the cruelest lesson of all. Sometimes the person who loves you most isn't lost in one terrible moment. They're lost one disappointment at a time. Until one day you reach for them. And discover there's nobody there anymore. 3 years later. The name Quinn Coronelli no longer existed. Legally, socially, emotionally. I was simply Quinn again. The first few months had been difficult. Not because I missed Damien. Because I didn't know who I was without him. I'd spent 30 years being someone's wife. 30 years making my world revolve around one person. When that person disappeared, it felt like stepping off a ship and realizing I'd forgotten how to walk on land. So I learned. Slowly. Painfully. I bought a small bookstore near the coast. Nothing fancy. Nothing connected to the family. Nothing connected to violence. Just books. Coffee. Rain against windows. Peace. The kind of peace I'd never had before. Vincent visited constantly. At first, he claimed he was checking on me. Then he claimed the coffee was good. Then he stopped making excuses altogether. One afternoon, he was helping me unpack a shipment when I looked up and caught him staring. He immediately looked away. Suspicious. Very suspicious. I narrowed my eyes. Vincent. He nearly dropped a box. What? Are you blushing? No. You absolutely are. I am not. You are. He sighed dramatically. I've been in love with you for 15 years. The box slipped from my hands. Books exploded across the floor. We stared at each other. Then at the books. Then at each other again. 15 years. Vincent rubbed his face. Unfortunately. I blinked. That's a very long time. I know. Why didn't you say anything? His expression became strange. A little sad. A little amused. Because you loved him. The answer hit harder than I expected. Just honest. For 15 years he'd stood beside me. Watching. Waiting. Knowing I'd never look at anyone else. Until now. That evening after he left, I sat alone in the bookstore. Thinking. About everything. About who I'd been. About who I wanted to become. About Damien. About Vincent. About myself. For the first time in years, none of those thoughts hurt. They simply existed. Like old photographs. Memories. Nothing more. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Damien sat alone in his office. The empire had grown larger. The money had doubled. His influence had spread across 3 countries. Everything he'd ever wanted. Everything he'd spent his life building. And none of it mattered. The office door opened. His lieutenant entered carefully. "Boss." Damien didn't look up. "What?" "The Eastern Ports signed the agreement." Silence. "The new casino project was approved." More silence. "The council wants to leave." The man immediately left. Because everyone knew. The Don hadn't been the same for years. He still ruled. Still won. Still terrified everyone. But something fundamental was missing. Like a house after the fire had already burned through it. Still standing. Completely empty. On his desk sat a framed photograph. The same one. The children. The street kid. The sick little girl. Every morning he looked at it. Every night he looked at it. And every day he hated the man he'd become. Because that boy would never have hurt her. Never. Not once. Then one rainy afternoon. Fate finally got bored. Damien was leaving a meeting when he spotted a familiar figure through a cafe window. His entire body froze. Quinn. Laughing. Actually laughing. The sound carried faintly through the glass. Across from her sat Vincent. The two of them were arguing over something ridiculous. A dessert. A book. A joke. He couldn't hear. But it didn't matter. Because she looked happy. Genuinely happy. Healthier. Brighter. Alive. The version of her he'd stolen from the world years ago. Vincent reached across the table and brushed a crumb from the corner of her mouth. The gesture was natural. Comfortable. Intimate. Quinn rolled her eyes. Then smiled. A smile Damien hadn't seen directed at him in years. His chest tightened so violently he had to grab the wall. The bodyguards immediately rushed forward. "Boss?" Damien raised a hand. Stopping them. His eyes never left the window. Inside the cafe, Quinn looked up. For one brief second. Their eyes met. The world seemed to stop. Neither moved. Neither smiled. Neither spoke. Then Quinn simply nodded. A polite acknowledgement. The kind you give an old acquaintance. Nothing more. Then she turned back to Vincent. And continued laughing. Damien stood there long after they left. Long after the rain started. Long after the street emptied. Because in that moment he finally understood something. The punishment for losing Quinn had never been the divorce. Or the loneliness. Or the regret. The punishment was living long enough to see that she could be happy without him. And knowing he was the reason she had to learn how. For the first time in years, Don Damien Coronelli cried. Just as a husband who had been loved completely. And realized it too late. The winter came early that year. Not the kind that brought peace. The kind that came after a long collapse. After everything had already broken. Damien's empire didn't fall in a war. It fell in silence. One by one, the pieces began to disappear. A port seized. A council betrayed. A lieutenant arrested. A ledger leaked. At first, people thought it was coincidence. Then they realized something worse. It was surrender. Not from enemies. From inside. Men who had once died for him were now selling everything he owned for immunity. Not because they were brave. Because they were afraid of what came after loyalty. And at the center of it all, Damien did nothing. He didn't fight it. Didn't punish it. Didn't even try to stop it. He just let it burn. Vincent found him the night the last stronghold collapsed. The old estate overlooking the sea. The place where everything had started. Damien was standing outside. You knew this would happen, Vincent said quietly. Damien didn't turn. I made sure it did. Silence. The waves below crashed like distant applause. You could have survived this, Vincent continued. You could have rebuilt. Damien gave a faint laugh. It wasn't bitter. It was tired. I don't want to rebuild anything. Vincent studied him carefully. Then his voice sharpened. This isn't punishment. This is suicide. That finally made Damien look at him. And for a second, there was something almost like recognition. You're wrong, Damien said softly. Punishment would have been if I lived well after her. Vincent's jaw tightened. You think this honors her? No. A pause. Then quieter. I think this is the only thing left I can do that doesn't insult her memory. The next morning, the world woke up to headlines it didn't fully understand. Don Damien Coronelli's empire had been officially dismantled overnight. Assets frozen. Networks exposed. Entire operations collapsed. And the man himself. Gone. Just a final recording sent to every remaining channel in the family network. A single line. Don't follow me. I already lost everything worth leading for. They found him 3 days later. But on the cliff where he used to stand as a boy, long before he had a name worth fearing. His coat was gone. His watch gone. Only the old photograph remained in his hand. The one of 2 children smiling like the world had never taught them cruelty yet. His eyes were open. Dead inside. Like something had finally gone quiet inside him. Vincent was the one who identified him. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, almost to himself. He finally stopped chasing her. A pause. And she never even had to look back. The funeral never happened. There was no body to bury. Only rumors. In the underworld, they said the king had been assassinated. Others said he ran. Some said he was still alive, watching from somewhere far away, punishing himself more than anyone ever could. But the people who knew him best knew the truth. Don Damien Coronelli hadn't been killed by a rival. He hadn't been taken down by an enemy. He had simply outlived the only thing that ever kept him human. And when she finally walked away for good, there was nothing left strong enough to hold him together. Somewhere far away, in a quiet bookstore by the coast, Quinn never saw the news in detail. Only a small article. Criminal empire collapses after internal break. She read it once. Then folded the page. And went back to her customers. Just continuing. Because the real ending hadn't been his death. It was the fact that the world kept moving. Even after a man who once thought he owned everything finally disappeared like he never mattered at all.